Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Project, which is so capably done here at our local library under the leadership of Dennis Daly of the History Department. And this afternoon, we have the honor and the pleasure of meeting and talking to Richard Stevens, Korea War veteran. And Richard, where were you born?
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Right here.
Yeah, July 4th, 1930.
What part of town?
The city.
Uh-huh.
I was a city boy for the first 14 years of my life.
Well, I'll be darned.
Yeah,
You live right downtown here?
Right downtown here on Clifton Avenue.
Oh, in Clifton, yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful part of town, yeah. Well, where did you go to elementary school?
I went to, I got kicked back and forth every other year from between Webster and Vine Street Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that was because the Board of Education would change the district every year.
Oh, yeah.
And I was living right on Clifton where it was a divider.
Oh, yeah.
So they change their mind every year from 1 through 5.
1 through 5.
Every other year.
Sure. How about that? I hadn't heard about that one before. Well, what about your family? Did you have brothers and sisters?
I have 5 sisters and 6 brothers. Family of 12.
Holy cow.
Yep.
Isn't that something?
Yep.
Oh, that is. Growing up with a crowd like that must have been pretty darn
That was interesting.
interesting, to say the least.
Got-
Where did you fit into that 12?
I was the 5th child.
5th child.
Right. Yeah.
My goodness sakes. Well, and your parents, your dad was in business, was he?
My dad was a punch press operator for the Katy Lamp Company.
Oh, sure.
Most of his life, he was there for 45 years.
Is that so?
Yeah.
My goodness sake. Katy Lamp, yeah. Yeah, that's a well-known old-time firm, I'd say. And how about your sisters?
My sisters, you mean where they worked? Or,
Yeah, did they?
My sister Betty went to sewing school, and those were trade schools back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And she became a seamstress, and then during the war, she worked for a company by the name of Spurdy. It was a sun lamp company, but they made defense, some sort of defense equipment. And then Dorothy went to commercial high school and became a secretary. And later went into another defense. Those were home, worked in the defense factories during the war.
Right, that was that was a very common thing, and certainly all those wonderful people contributed heavily to the war effort
Right.
and everything like that.
Right.
Right. And your brothers, were they all active guys?
Ray was in the Army Air Force through the whole. He was one of the. I think it was the second draft, in September of 1940.
Oh.
Right before.
Right before
Pearl
Pearl
Harbor.
Harbor. Yeah. Right.
And he served for 5.5 years in the Army Air Force, all in Panama after his training.
Mm-hmm.
He was all in Panama. Brother Bob was rated a 4F. He had some spot on his lung, and they wouldn't take him. He tried all the services. They wouldn't take him, so he went to the defense factory, and he worked in that defense factory all that time.
I see.
But he went to printing high school, and he became a printer after the war.
Okay. All right.
Lifetime printer. Last March, he was our first and only death.
Oh.
The rest of them all are all alive.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I should say.
Brother Larry, younger than me, served after the Korean War. Harold was in between the drafts and other things, so he was never in.
Right.
And then Melvin, after Harold was, he served in the draft. He had a choice. He went in for 2 years, and then he had to stay in the reserve for 6. It was still that deal. And then Then there was, after Melvin, there was Ronnie, the baby. And he, a jack of all trades, he does everything. It's one in every family.
One of those wonderful guys, I'll
Yeah.
say. Can fix anything, huh?
Yeah.
That's great. Now, where did you go to high school, Richard?
Went to Sycamore High School.
Sycamore.
Yeah.
Oh, my golly, yes.
Yeah, I went to at the end of my sophomore year, in my family, the parents thought that was long enough and you needed to go to work. So I went to work in my father's factory at Katy Lamp Company for about 11 months or so, around, and never liked it.
Yeah.
So I decided I would become a career military man. And I enlisted on August 31st in 1948. And enlisted in the paratroopers. So I went to basic training.
Where did you have to go to enlist at that time?
Down at Fountain Square here.
Oh,
Went to Fountain Square. And there was a combination Army and Air Force.
I see.
I went there and did the intentions of joining the Air Force. But they told me that you had to have a high school education. And the guy says, apparently you like to fly. You'd like to fly. And I said, yeah, that's what I like to do. He says, well, the Army over here has an opening for you. So I went over to talk to the Army guy. And he said, did you ever hear of the paratroopers? I said, no. So he described what paratroopers do. And so that interested me, especially when he told me you got paid $50 extra a month. So,
Hey, that's a good deal.
so I became a paratrooper. Went down to Camp Breckenridge, in a camp that had been closed for quite some time.
Now, where's Breckenridge?
Breckenridge down in Kentucky. Should have said that. Breckenridge,
okay.
Kentucky.
I was just
Not too far, right across the river from Evansville, Indiana.
Oh, way
Everybody knows where
down
Evansville.
the river. Yeah.
But it was where the grass was 3 to 4 foot tall, and we opened that camp. Spread us all out across the field, spread arms apart, and we pulled the grass by hand.
Oh,
3 or
my
4
God.
passes.
Just pulling it up by hand, for
Yeah.
heaven's sake.
Didn't issue any gloves either. That was a 101st Airborne.
Welcome to the
Camp.
Air Force,
Yeah.
to the Army.
Yeah.
Well, that training, boy, oh boy, that must have been a real eye-opener for you,
Yeah.
because that's pretty rigorous.
Yeah. Then after basic training, those of us that were to go to jump school were told that we wouldn't be able to go for 4 to 6 months because the Army was switching over from the C-47 troop carrier they jumped from to the new C-82 boxcar.
Oh, yeah.
So everything at the jump school down at Fort Benning was being renovated. So it took them that long to renovate that. So what was they going to do with us? They trained a number of us to be boiler operators. And we kept the boilers going in all the buildings over that time. And then the regimental, he was a colonel, commander, he was looking for the windows were out in most of these barracks, all busted out. And he was looking to see if there was somewhere within the group of guys that knew how to put glass in. Well, I was the guy, I knew how to do that.
You were a glazer.
So I glazed and operated boilers for almost 6 months.
For God's sake.
Yeah. Until February 49, I think it was.
But you were still getting that extra $50, weren't you?
Nope, you don't get that till after you go down and go through jump school.
Oh, after jump school. I
Yeah.
got you.
Yeah. Jump school, they start the school out with, in those days, it was a 7-week course. And they started each class out with near 300 men. And the average to finish was 85 to 100 out of 300.
Wow.
Yeah, so that wouldn't pay ahead of time.
Boy, I'll say not. Well, now that was all down at Benning, wasn't
It
it?
was all down Fort Benning, Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where they have the tower that
The
you'll
towers.
jump off first.
Yeah, 40-foot tower that you jump out of with
Yeah.
cables on you.
Yeah.
And they hoist you up like Coney Island. And that was
Right.
fun. 200 feet and drop you off. Yeah. And some very rigorous training.
Oh, I'm sure.
And those days you packed your own chute.
Yeah.
Part of one of the week's training was learn how to pack parachutes.
Yeah, now that was interesting. That
Yeah.
was very, very
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah. The first jump was really interesting because that was a chute you packed.
Right. You better darn well make sure that you did it right.
That's right. It was part of the packing a chute is on a very long, I think it was 50-foot table, I think. 50-foot long table. And while you were packing it, you used shock pads that were small, like bean bags. Well, they were elongated. And you called them shock pads. So the standing joke was that hope you didn't leave any shock pads in your chute.
Oh, boy. Now, those chutes were made out of nylon, weren't they?
They're made out of nylon, were 38 feet long. A lot of people are surprised by that. Wide.
Right.
38 feet wide,
30
diameter.
feet wide.
38-foot diameter.
Yeah.
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 Today they're a lot different,
Oh, my golly. They have all those
like everything else.
funny, narrow things
Yeah,
today.
you can walk on them now. You walk around with them. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But you know that, and of course a parachute on a man's back. I mean, it was really outstanding. It was a sight that you knew right away that was a special person.
That's what they all said.
So then, how long were you at Benning?
I was at Fort Benning those 7 weeks, and then got assigned to the 82nd Airborne, Fort Bragg,
Second. Okay.
and got assigned to the artillery.
Uh-huh.
Don't know why, but they put me in the artillery. So I went through that was probably till probably till June, July 50. So the war started in June of 50,
Right.
and I was still at Fort Bragg in that artillery.
Okay, so you went from Benning then to Bragg.
Right?
I got you.
Yeah. I stayed at
Big Army base. Huge.
Please?
Bragg's a huge place.
Oh, yes. Pope Air Force, an Air Force base there.
Yeah.
To accommodate transport and the jumpers
Oh, I see.
at Pope Air Force Base.
Right.
That's a huge port, very big.
Yes.
So I spent time there learning how to work with artillery pieces. And
What did you learn to handle in the artillery?
I went from what they call cannoneer to gunner. When I left there, I was a gunner.
Right.
That's learn how to set up a artillery piece and fire it correctly.
Right. Right. And you had to be able to repair it and all that sort of thing.
Right, we took care of them.
Wow.
Yeah, did all the maintenance on them
Right.
and repaired them.
Right.
I went on a lot of maneuvers, fire maneuvers. One year, I think it was sometime in 49, late 49, we went on what they called Operation Combine down in Puerto Rico. We jumped in Puerto Rico. And the reason they called it Combine was because the Navy, Marines, and the Air Force, and those parts of the 82nd Airborne Division. And it was a mock invasion.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
I think that was probably I wasn't Fort Bragg too long, probably July or August 49.
You know, that period in history is, to a lot of people, is fuzzy. You know, the end of World War II, bang. That was very clear cut, you know. And then the beginning of the Korea War in 50. Now, were you called, were you moved to from Bragg. Then were you moved to the Pacific?
Here's what happened. A communique came down in early July that the Army was forming for the first time Airborne company troops, Airborne Ranger company troops. And they had to volunteer for that. So I volunteered for that.
Okay.
And you had to go through a lot of rigorous, they claimed the academic test was the same one they gave to OCAS to qualify for Officers Training School. And then a lot of physical tests. And I think by that time it was probably mid-August, and I got accepted into that training. And in September and October of '50, I went through training for the 1st Ranger Company. I got assigned to the 1st Ranger Company. We were the first to get shipped out in November of '15 from, back up a little bit, all that training, by the way, the Rangers went in Fort Benning. That all went out. Back to Fort Benning.
Back and forth.
Back to Fort Benning. Yeah. So
You had a lot of train travel, huh?
yeah. There again, there was a large percentage of washout in that school.
Was it?
Yeah, we started with, I think it was something like 250 some fellows, and we wound up with 105.
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, that was really rigorous.
That's pretty
There
heavy.
probably isn't any training more rigorous than that.
Right. Well, there's so much physical involved in it, wasn't it? Yeah.
Taught you back then they called it judo.
Yeah.
Taught you explosives. Taught you, educated you about all different type of weapons, to include foreign weapons. Taught us how to drive different tanks, to include Russian T-34s.
Really?
So that if we would come in contact and we need to turn them around, we could do that.
Sure.
Yeah. I understood that at least that's what they said. One of the reasons they took some artillerymen was so they had that familiarity with the artillery pieces to do the same thing, to turn them around. So they taught us how to fire Russian weapons, and because that's what the communists had.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did you find that kind of equipment interesting to learn about? Or?
Oh yeah, I was young, and I that's why I liked all that kind of
sure.
intrigue.
You were a natural for that.
I probably would never do it today, but it was all the glory stuff. It's what you did have to say.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Put us on a train November the 15th and took us across to San Francisco.
How about that?
And we shipped out of there, I think it was 5 or 6 days later, to Yokohama, Japan. Landed in Yokohama, Japan, and it took us up by train to a little camp called Camp Zama in Yamaguchi, Japan. Re-equipped us with everything and new weapons and new everything. And then put us on another train down to, I don't remember what that little town was. It's right across from Busan.
Oh.
And they took us over on a ferry there. And
I mean, the southern tip of Formosa and the northern tip of Japan, they're pretty close, aren't they?
I don't think so. Formosa, no, that's pretty far. Formosa, which is Taiwan now,
Yeah.
is pretty good distance.
Well, I mean the northern part of Japan. Was that Hokkaido? The big island that was north of,
The northern part of Japan is Hokkaido.
yeah.
Yeah, we shipped out of what is that? Near Beipu, which is Koyaida, I think, something like that. That island of Japan. But I can't remember the name of that little port that I think it started with an S, starting to come back.
So then
We went to Busan,
Busan was, that was your
Korea.
landing.
Went to Busan, Korea. Kept us in a school building overnight, or it might have been a big old warehouse, I'm not sure. And then flew us up to Kempo, Japan, near Seoul.
Oh.
And then trucked us to the center front. And by that time, it was like December, early December.
Cold weather.
And attached us. We worked from the front of the 2nd Division. And we did, spent all of our time attached to that division and worked in the front of the various of their units, the 9th Regiment, 38th Regiment, and I think the other one was...
Now, this is when Mark Clark was there, General Mark Clark.
He was there almost on the way out at that time.
Oh, he was?
Yeah. Walker had just left.
Walker.
General Walker had just left.
Yeah.
He got killed,
Right.
and he did. And shortly thereafter, General Ridgway took over.
Ridgway.
Yeah. And he was there
Right.
we was under him most of the time.
I see.
We got many assignments of patrol tribe at the beginning. We did a lot of patrolling, was successful in getting prisoners to bring back for information.
Sure.
There was a thought, and it was true, it happened, that they were going to have another big offensive. But they didn't know it was going to be the Chinese. They thought they heard it was going to be.
Now, you hadn't encountered the Chinese yet.
No. It was North Koreans.
Yeah.
All the North Koreans.
Right.
Encountered our first Chinese New Year's Eve
Of
of 1951.
51. Okay.
Yeah. But we were assigned a lot of bridges to protect. And here we didn't know that our troops were withdrawn. And what we were actually doing was guarding and holding off the North Koreans.
Oh.
And then shortly thereafter, after those assignments, they gave us order to blow the bridges up. So we blew the bridges up, the railroad tracks up. And
Bridges at Toko-Ri. Did you ever read that book?
Yeah.
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 Well,
Then the big offensive started.
yeah. Now, did you have personal contact with North Koreans, the enemy?
Up to that point, no. We just killed them.
Yeah.
When you say personal to me,
Yeah.
that means hand-to-hand
Not
combat.
hand-to-hand or anything
Not
like
yet.
that? Not yet?
Not yet.
Wow.
But we had to kill a lot of them.
Yes.
That's what we
Sure.
did. Killed
And-
so many one time that we actually just had bodies all. It sounds like a story, but it's the truth.
Sure.
We was on a hill and we was defending the hill. This was during that period where we was in a holding them off, so that the rest of the division and the rest of the troops could retreat and form a. Ridgway was there by that time, and he was forming a line called No Name Line, I think it was, a line of defense. apparently didn't have any desire at that point. He wasn't ready to attack or counter or anything.
I see.
He had home.
Yeah.
So we held that hill for 3 nights. We got relieved the next day by an infantry battalion. So a battalion relieved the company.
Wow.
That was probably, I think a battalion's 800 men.
Sure. The company is about what?
We were 100 at that point, because we had lost one, we were 104.
Oh my goodness sakes.
But
Well,
we
you
had so
guys
many
were-
bodies laying all over. This one officer couldn't believe it. He said, we got to get them out of here.
Gosh.
So yeah, well, they kept pretty close to us.
Yeah, I'll say.
Within 15 or 20 feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness sakes.
We were, one of the things that I neglected to tell you, it's kind of hard to remember. The way we were outfitted was almost all automatic weapons. We had very little, each squad had 2 riflemen.
You had a BAR? Did
Had
you carry-
BAR and LMGs,
Okay.
yeah. And we had 2 ammunition carriers. They had the little carbines. And then we had 2 riflemen for protection of that machine gun.
I see.
And we had 2 LMGs and 2 bars in there, in each squad.
Wow.
So, and we were really trained to use them.
I'll bet.
Yeah. We spent a day in that mountain I'm talking about now at this point, where we had time to zero in on targets of opportunity. And they come up those targets of opportunity at night, and they come up pretty open, because up to that point, they had it pretty easy. The North Koreans did, because they caught our troops, or our normal troops, in garrison fashion when they started that war. So these guys it was kind of a shame they weren't too trained. And so when they came against us, they found it was a lot different. They actually, according to our company commander, they actually reported a regiment in front of them, and it was just us.
It was up to you.
Yeah, it was just us.
be darned.
Yeah, that was our first big clash with them.
Right. Now, of course, that quote unquote, they didn't want to call it, Truman didn't want to call it a war, but the United Nations was really supposed to be operating the operation. Isn't that true?
Well,
Because our
all of-
forces were under the United Nations leadership, or? No.
the command, actually, United Nations was under our leadership.
Okay,
They were under Ridgway, and we were under Walker.
okay,
They were, and they ran the show. Our troops, and that included the South Koreans. We commanded them all, and when we were in the 2nd Division, we had a French battalion attached to that 2nd Division.
oh,
And later on, if we get this far, we fought side by side with that French battalion.
no kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting.
and was some kind of a group.
Were they?
Yeah, they were made up of Foreign Legion.
Oh, tough
They were
guys.
made up of ex-cons
Yep,
and paratroopers.
right.
And the 3 of that was a mix. Those 3 outfits, they were something else.
I'll bet.
But they were highly trained, and they really fought well.
Tough guys.
Tough guy.
Did you ever have any contact with the Turks?
Yes,
Did you really?
yes, yeah. Because we were moved from time to time at different spots, and so we had what I would call not any contact with them in combat, but we were in reserve next to them once,
I see.
and we got to talk to them a lot. Yeah. Same way with the Dutch. Yeah. And the Aussies and the English.
Right.
We had contact with all those fellows. But we fought with the French boys.
How about that? My goodness sakes. Well, that was really, I, 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 I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you know, I, I missed the Korean War, but, you I followed it very carefully, very thoroughly, and being a historian, I was very interested in the mix there of different troops and so forth. The North Koreans, they would try and infiltrate at night.
Oh, most of the Chinese and North Koreans did most of their attacking at night.
At night.
Because, and they had a intelligence right, because our troops were not trained to fight at night. No, we were the only ones that were trained to fight at night. That was part of our training back and forth.
Part of your ranger training.
We fought at night, or we had maneuvers at night, and how to maneuver, how to communicate. We had all that kind of training at night.
How about your clothing? Did you have adequate clothing and boots?
Well, yeah, we were outfitted fine. That's what happened in Japan.
Yeah.
Now, the other guys weren't early.
Yeah.
We ran into some that still had their summer clothes.
Yeah.
And all that happened so fast.
Wow.
Yeah. But we had everything, the shoe packs and we're getting ready for 40 below zero weather.
40 below.
Which occurred in...
How about chow?
Please?
How about chow?
That was a problem. That was a problem because we were moved so fast. I told you how quick we were moved.
Yes.
And we really wasn't, from a supply point of view, we were not listed fast enough to get rations.
Gosh.
So for 6 weeks, we got by on the land. And we were kind of lucky in a respect that helped us because we had one of the guys in the outfit was a butcher in the Chicago stockyards. And they had small pigs and small deer over there. Nothing, and then only the people are small, even the animals are. So we actually did our own thing for 6 weeks. Yeah.
Well, you were lucky to have him along.
Yeah, man, he butchered that stuff up good.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And then we found out that their homes, the doors were built out of wire, reinforced. So we tore that all off, and the ground where we were had charcoal in it. So we had charcoal parties.
For heaven's sake. How about that?
We had a pretty many wildlife we took to the point where the couple of Jeeps we had, and we never got it. We weren't equipped with transportation. Everything was by foot. But while we were over there, it didn't take us very long. We picked up equipment that was left behind, and we got it started up, and we scrounged gas, and we wound up with 2 Jeeps. That was our company commander's idea. Yeah, he rode in one of them. But we strapped those deer. It was so cold. We strapped those deer across the front.
How about that?
Yeah. And General Ridgway was up looking at the front on one of his tours, and he seen that, and he wanted to know who the hell that outfit was that had them.
Very self-sufficient guy, as you were.
Yeah, we had to be.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, how did you feel about, of course, your training at Breckenridge and then Benning and then Bragg was very, very thorough.
Yes.
You felt pretty confident, did you, against the enemy?
Yes. Yes.
Tell us, how did you feel about firing and killing, guys and all that sort of thing?
The first one takes a toll on you. It's kind of a kill.
Yeah.
And then after the longer you're there, the tougher you get.
Yeah.
You become sort of a killer.
Yeah.
You do.
Right.
And you don't even think about it.
Well,
they're there and
they're there to kill you,
yeah.
and you better jolly well do your job.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. With your physical training, you must have been in pretty good condition too.
Yeah, I weighed 65 pounds. And we were all, the makeup of that company, it take a while to explain how that company was made up.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Okay, there was there was former cadre from the jump school. They put 5 of them volunteered, and so they were very tough individuals.
Right.
They did the training in jump school, and everybody hears about Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing.
Yes.
It's the same thing. And we had those guys. We had 4 or 5 from the Ranger battalions of the Second World War. We did. Old vets.
Right.
One of them was a command sergeant, highest rank you could get, non-commissioned. He was the platoon leader of 1st Platoon. They had infantrymen, artillerymen. They had some fellows that were medics.
Right.
But everybody was trained the same way. And it was a mixture of real elite men. It was. Yeah. So you felt very comfortable with all of them around you.
I should say so.
Yeah. You know,
Sure.
yeah. Everybody knew what they were doing.
Everybody
Yeah.
relied on each other and,
Oh, yeah.
and supported each other.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's just become very thick with one another.
Oh, I can imagine.
To this day, we have meetings down in Georgia.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, each year we get a few less, but
Yeah, I wondered about that, if you kept in touch with your fellow.
yeah, we have a national organization, and the company I was in has what they call a company vacation every year in May, and they have it in different places in Georgia, and we go down there and have a weekend with one another.
Great. That's great. Yeah, that camaraderie was so important.
Yep.
And of course, us older fellows, we're losing our guys pretty darn fast these days. But now, Richard, did they call you Richard or Dick or what?
They call me Dick.
Called you Dick. Okay. As time was going on now, you're up into 1951.
Right, we're in there. That was New Year's Eve, 1951.
Okay.
4 guys from my squad were sent out on a patrol. I had been on sentry duty all night. There was something happened where they couldn't send somebody out to relieve me, and my feet got kind of bad. Or I went with those guys because our squad were made up in two 5-man teams, and that was my team. And they were sent out on patrol and left me back because of my feet. They never come back. They all wound up prisoners.
Oh,
Didn't know this until after, well after the war.
wow.
They found out they were prisoners.
Did they survive?
None of them, no.
None of them survived.
No, they found out what they were, and they treated them pretty bad.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. One of them was just made. He just became a citizen. His name was George Luzinski, but he came from Poland, and the North Koreans turned him over to the Russians. I don't know whatever happened to him. Yeah. But, no, they all died in prison. Those 4 guys.
Oh, yeah. Terrible. Terrible. What was your rate of mortality or wounded in your outfit?
Overall,
Yeah.
overall, we had about another 85 to 100 replacements,
Okay.
and we had those original 105. We had, I think it was 52 deaths. We had many casualties, too numerous to count. And we had, I think it was 9 prisoners of war.
Wow.
It was. The rate was pretty high.
Yeah, I'll say it was.
Most of that casualty rate happened in May. In May. So we were in 3 major campaigns from January through May. We were in the Chinese intervention when they came in the first week in January. That big offensive was mostly Chinese. And we went through that. And then in February, it was all Chinese again in a town called Chipyongli. We lost, we had 39 casualties in that thing. History says that was the turning point of the Korean War, and that was the first defeat suffered by the Chinese communists. First defeat suffered by the Chinese Communist Army. That was all through mid-February. It was a terrible battle. And that's where we fought with the French. They distinguished themselves quite well. The French were pretty good. And then in May, where we lost the biggest group, is I think they wound up nicknaming that thing. That was the middle of May, around May the 18th. It was nicknamed May Massacre because in the end there were so many Chinese killed in that. We defeated them, and they were retreating, and the Air Forces tore them up. That was the beginning of the end, the beginning of the truce talks when that happened. We lost all but one officer.
Really?
Yeah, and quite a few of all the other ones. That's where I got a grenade pitched at me, and my right heel got out of here. Can't hear out of it. Yeah. And I had fragmentation up and down my legs and arms. And I was lucky because it was not what they call it. It wasn't it was a concussion grenade. So that had smaller fragments and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's made with metal rather than steel.
Are you still carrying any lead?
That was all picked out of me.
It was.
Yeah.
How about that?
All picked out. Yeah.
Well, you must have
The biggest thing that happened to me with that was it tore my inside of my ear up. All of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame. But you are a lucky man, and you're.
Oh yeah.
You're a tough survivor. Tell us some more about some of your experiences over there.
Well, I have one interesting one. We sometime in, I think it was March, sometime around March or so, we went on a patrol at night, and they put us on tanks and took us back pretty far, and then we marched about another hour or so till we came into a thick woods, and we were moving through that in what they call a diamond formation.
Oh yeah.
We broke up in diamonds.
Yeah.
And my platoon leader gave me the job of the flanker, the right flanker. I had to stay out far. I was only carrying a rifle that night. We varied our weapon carries, depending on the mission. We had a stock of weapons, and we drew out of them. And I was carrying a rifle that night. And they got into a firefight at the point of it. And he never called me back. He never called me back. And I waited, and about a half hour, so I moved back to where we were, where we were supposed to all meet, if anything occurred, and they were all gone. So there I was all by myself. So how far back? I don't know how. That was really far back. Took me about 2 nights. I elected not to travel during the day, and I traveled at night.
And you were all alone?
Yeah,
Wow.
for 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but, and I got back about 2.5 days. After 2.5 days, I got back to where we were.
Uh-huh.
They had taken us from a reserve position. We were in reserve to it was again they were trying to find out what was going on, what they were doing. So the object was to go out and go behind the lines and capture some people and bring them back. Well, we ran into too much opposition. There was must have been a lot, because the first day, like I say, I elected to stay up in the mountains during the day, and I seen about 40, 50 Chinese going up the valley. And so that big of a group just to patrol was indicated there was a pretty big force.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, you had to keep your head down, didn't you?
So I got my way back, found my way back. But when I got back, they'd already sent my records out.
Oh, they had.
And me listed as MIA.
Missing in action, yeah.
So the company commander gave me a Jeep, and I was told to go find my records, see if I couldn't catch them.
Uh-huh.
And I caught them down in the 8th Army headquarters. I caught up with them. And they were sitting in a stack of deaths and MIAs to be shipped out the next day.
How about that?
So if I'd have been another day, my mom and pop were going to get a bad notice.
Bad notice, I'll say.
Yeah, but I got out of that.
So you snatched those records out of there
Yep,
and got
went
back
back.
back to your outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I'm telling you, you're a survivor. You're wonderful.
And I got into one worse than that, and the one in May that I told you about.
Yeah.
We were up on a hill, and what we did there, we were sent up to relieve the Dutch outfit. There were some rumors that they were crabbing about being where they were, and it was their unit was too small, and they couldn't hold off. They were getting attacked by each night. So it's like about 10 o'clock at night, they woke us up. We had been sleeping. We were in reserve again. And this was like something like May the 14th or 15th or something. So we forced march and went up this big old hill, and halfway up the hill, here the Dutch were already coming back down.
Oh, gee.
They told our company commander, don't go up there. It's swarming with Chinese. So he was going to do his mission. That was his assignment. And we went up there. And when we got up there wasn't anybody there. And we took over. The Dutch had done a good job of digging in. And so we took up their positions. And the next morning, daylight, we got hit with a whole lot of Chinese. The Dutch were right. There was swarming. Yeah. So we were in a defensive position, and we fought them off. And at that night, it was quiet again, which was unusual for them. Usually it was the opposite. So early that morning, about 5 o'clock, was when that grenade got thrown up on my position. And I told you about that, I got hit. And then about noon that day, coming up in this big draw was a ton of Chinese. Well, we had fired our weapons so much, we were about out of ammunition. And through the sniper fire and the attack the night before, we were down to about 30 guys. And here all these guys were coming up.
Gosh.
So not that I ever agreed with it, but the only officer we had left, a fellow by the name of Lieutenant Jim Green, he's the guy that didn't call me back. He gave us the command of every man for himself.
Really?
Really.
You're on your own.
Every man for himself. So I looked around at him and he said, "Get going." And I was going to tell him, "Don't you think we all just stay together?" He says, "I told you to get the hell out of here." So I start moving out, and I had this little 17-year-old kid come up and wanted to go with me. So he went with me. And I took a buddy of mine who was hurt, took him with me, a kid by the name of Robert Layden. And we proceeded to go down that mountain. We were exchanging back and forth. We would do some fire, and the other group would do some fire just to keep them, so that all of us could get out of there. But there were so many of them coming that we dispersed out, and like Green said, all on your own. So we stuck, the two guys I had with me, we stuck together and were helping the one who was injured fairly bad down. And I ran in probably 20, 30 second division guys. Near it about halfway down. And they were sitting there not knowing what to do. They didn't have anybody to command them. So the hell joined me, you know, I wanted to get out of there, and the more I had, the better off I was. So I took them with me. And we got down the base of the hill, and there was another 100 or so second division guys. And they were pinned down by these Chinese that were coming behind Rice Paddy Hills. It wasn't an active rice paddy, it was a dead one, being, you know, it was war. And so I hollered, I got them to start firing. We were about to be overrun if they didn't. Well, I got them to use their weapons. We started doing pretty good, and we got them Chinamen running. I thought we got them running, but when this rice paddy it's a big open place, and it was bent right on the corner. When I got around the corner, here I seen some of our tanks. They were firing at them too, so we were getting some help we didn't know about.
How about that?
We're lucky. Nothing but luck.
Yes, I should say.
By that time, I was carrying my buddy because he was getting worse. And as we got about 100 yards from the damn tanks, he got hit in the back, and it killed him. So we succeeded in getting to those tanks. By the time we got there, we had about 200 guys with us. But that was the worst, and that was the one that was called May Massacre. Mm-hmm.
The offensive kind of stuttered and stopped and then moved ahead and had to retreat, or did you go through anything?
That was us retreating, and then they gathered, Ridgway gathered his army together, and they started a counterattack.
Oh, yeah.
And like I told you earlier, the Chinese had to move during the day.
Sure.
One of the first times.
Sure.
And the Air Force and the Navy and everybody, they just tore them up.
Yeah.
Tore them up.
That's when you really could take them on and clear them out.
That was the reason for the nickname, May
Massacre.
Massacre.
That was May Massacre, right. Yeah. And that was May of 51, right?
May of 51.
Yeah.
I was running down that hill May the 18th, 1951.
How about that?
I wound up in a field hospital, and they took care of me about 2 weeks. And during that period of time, a couple officers kept coming and interrogating me, find out what went on.
Sure.
And then them same two officers told me that the Army had decided to break up the Rangers. And I had to decide I had some choices to make where I wanted to go. So they gave me some choices. They looked at my experience, and one of them was to go to an Air Force transportation unit over to Shield Air Force Base to lash and load equipment and kick that out and all that stuff and drop it over.
Right.
I got shipped over there, and I was there about a week and a half, and they told me that there were truce talks starting to go on. So they wouldn't have any need at this time for. The reason that was the Air Force and I was in the Army, but they were short on help. So they were going to put me in that job. So I didn't get to do that, and they assigned me to an artillery outfit.
Here you are back in
Back
the
to
artillery.
Back to Yamaguchi, Japan.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I spent it because by that time, that's what that same little camp that I had left from in Yamaguchi was now an artillery company in there. Battery, they call them.
Battery, yeah.
So I spent from, that was probably July 51 until April 52. And then they sent me back home for discharge.
Okay, okay. Well, Dick, you have had...
a lot of in-between in that time,
tremendous experience, and we're so proud of you and grateful for what you did. You got a family here in Cincinnati still?
Yes, I do.
You got children and so forth?
I got 4 children.
Nice.
3 boys and 1 girl.
Oh, that's wonderful.
They all went through Finneytown High School in the Finneytown School District system.
They did?
All 4 of them, yeah.
Well, the Sycamore High School of today is a lot different from the one you went to, isn't it?
Oh, my.
It's so huge.
Yeah, I look back, my wife from Blue Ash went to Sycamore too.
I'll be
And
darned.
we talk about what a change that would have been if we'd have stayed there instead
Yes, yes, I should say.
Yeah.
Well, we're just about to run out of time here, and we want to thank you so much for coming in and telling us your story. It's very important. You're going to get a DVD of this interview, so your whole family can see and hear your story.
Okay.
And again, sir, we thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I think that's the end of it.